Welcome, friends, to Tanked Up, the podcast about video games and beer. I'm one of your hosts, Ben. It's episode 277. I am here, once again, with Lucy.
Hi there, Ben.
Hey. And we have a returning Adam.
Hello.
Hey.
I have returned. It's becoming more and more frequent now. It's terrifying.
That's fine. It's fine.
Good.
I mean, we're at some point, and I know when you first appeared, we got you on, and you did try out a couple of kind of beers that you were able to source, sort of, you know, from the supermarket or wherever you kind of got them from. But I imagine that our beer chat is just wearing you down more and more each week, and one day we'll find a beer for you.
I mean, if Adil, who's sadly not with us, his plan comes to fruition, then yes, that is what will happen, because he'll discover what it is and he'll send it to me.
Exactly, yeah.
But until then, I'm stuck with my customary Pepsi at this point.
Perfect.
Other soft drinks are available.
Yeah. Good. Before we begin, Foregathers, thank you very much for the follow over on Twitch. If you don't join us on Twitch usually, come and join in the conversation with us. Come and have some beers, chat about some video games. We are here each and every week. Normally on a Tuesday. I had to push it to a Wednesday this week. And I did finish last week's episode by saying we were having Callum back on this week. But because
I killed him.
Just so you could come on again. No, because I changed the day, he couldn't do the evening instead. So he's going to be on next week, hopefully, when we're back on a Tuesday evening. So as we do every week, we'll jump into our beers first. Lucy, what are you opening?
I am opening one of the beers. Let's see which one is the more appropriate one to open. I'm gonna drink a beer from Moonwake. Also, I said Moonquake.
Moonwaker?
Moonwake. No, not Moonraker. James Bond film.
I was thinking more of the Michael Jackson 1992 absolutely insane film.
We don't speak of that here.
Walker, I think.
Oh god.
How much did he spend on that? Like the one with Janet Jackson video? Was it Scream? Wasn't it like the most expensive?
I mean, it probably still is more than any Game of Thrones episode ever made. Like, just
yeah, more than any Marvel film cost to make. Cost. Let's have a look.
Give us some facts.
7 million in 1995.
Well, that's like 4 billion now, isn't it? So that's
yeah. Anyway, Moonwake Beer Company, who are a new one for me. I like their can design. It may be coming up as black on the screen, but it's actually like a deep navy blue, contrasted with orange. It's a 5% IPA. There is some flavour text. It says, packed full of citrus and pine flavours from Southern Cross and Chinook, rounded off with German malts and dextrin for hoppy, bittersweet punch. That's it. Yeah, Southern X and or cross. I like that. It says Southern Cross in the writing, and it just says Southern X. It's like the PlayStation debate: is it a cross or an X? And it's definitely an X. And Chinook, it's got oats in it, so hopefully a nice full smooth beer. But scan here to discover more, so I might do that.
What was the name of it?
I don't know if it has a name. It might just be. It just says IPA at the bottom there, so I don't know if it actually has a name. Maybe they're new and it's just like we have one IPA at this point, so we just called it IPA.
Original. Do you think they would have more names if they were new?
All the names have been used. We're getting ridiculous. We're getting ridiculous names.
But it's from Scotland, so.
Oh,
way!
Representing, nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna scan this little QR code, see what's going on. Probably
Cool.
best to do that before I open it, so
Yes.
don't spill it everywhere. Doing a deal.
Good. You do that. Scan your code, pour your beer, and I will let you know what I'm drinking. I'm coming almost halfway to Scotland.
Not good enough.
I'm not quite there.
You damn mute, you bet.
Drinking a Pomona Island, who are in Salford. Talking of ridiculous names, this beer is called The Man with the Four-Way Hips. It's a 4.8% pale ale. Street level, down in the ground. You can't miss it, so check this out. Double dry hop pale, Citra, Mosaic, Eldorado, Strata. That's everything they give us. So it does have oats in. I only know that because it's on the list of allergens. Again, I don't know how the can comes over. Very, very blue actually. So it's maybe not quite as navy as Lucy's. But Pomona, nice simple can art. Every single time. So let's crack this open. And Lucy, I imagine that you've poured, you've scanned, you know what's going on. You've read through the entire history of Moonwake beer.
Yeah, and it is just called IPA.
Fair enough. At least it does what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah, hopefully. I want to see when they were established, because you haven't heard of them, have you, Ben?
No, I haven't.
Where on?
I have been a bit lax on the socials in terms of sort of like following and keeping up with kind of like new breweries and things over the last couple of weeks. I do need an hour or so on all the different channels to jump on and jump back in with follows and things. So it'll be I will look for them at some point.
Yeah, but it does seem like they are very new, because all their range that I can see, they're literally just called IPA, Pale Ale, Lager. So it's likely that they have just one of those. But here we go.
Give us the lowdown.
Leaf Shore. Do you know what that is?
No.
No
I want to see.
East Coast, West Coast, South, North, Highlands.
I'm not an
Lowlands.
atlas, Ben. I may have a phone with, Google Maps on it, but we're not going to do that.
I thought you were GeoGuessr champion, mate. You should
we
just know
are.
a name and you know exactly where it is these days.
Haven't landed in Scotland just as yet. The farthest north I've actually, in this country that I've ended up is Jarrow in Newcastle.
Okay. What the bollards like up in
played it in
Newcastle? Like,
Just ripped out of the ground and fallen over, I imagine. But I think that I'll have to look when they were established. But anyway, the beer. It looks like a traditional IPA. Looks like it sort of looks like a West Coast IPA, which is actually what I'm drinking next from something else. But it's very, very cloudy. It looks like cloudy apple juice that's like either very, very pure or from concentrate apple juice. One of the two. Where it's like, this has just come out of a carton, or this is like pure, just picked right off the tree kind of apple juice. But yeah, it probably looks a bit more ambery on the screen, but it's sort of like a deep orange color. It's got a nice smell to it, nice, fresh, slightly citrusy smell to it. I read on the website that it's also got lemon drop hops in it as well, so that might be coming off the flavour. But yeah, quite subtle, but definitely smelling the citrus.
Nice. Looks deep. Looks dark.
It does. That is an old school IPA.
Okay.
So, as Adam said, it does do exactly what it says on the tin, which is nice. Because you don't usually get IPAs like this anymore, because it's really bitter. Oh yeah. That's really good. It's sort of got like it's got that citrus at the start, but it fades away very quickly. And it's sort of got like this kind of, the bitterness is like sort of slightly metallic, but not in a bad way, not in like, oh, something like mass market beer. You get that kind of tinny kind of aftertaste. This has got a much more earthy, bitter taste to it. And it's slightly, you get a slightly perfuminess. Maybe that's the fruit mixing with the bitterness, but
Okay.
it's quite dry. At the start, it feels like, oh, this is quite, thirst quenching, and then all of a sudden it's like it just dries your mouth out instantly, and it makes you want to drink more. But it is really nice. As I say, it's like a classic IPA, but there's something about it where it does have that kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. Where the bitterness isn't overwhelming. You still, it lasts and it lingers in the taste, but it isn't like, oh, this is just bitterness and nothing else.
Okay.
Where sometimes I think some West Coast IPAs can just be like very bitter and not have a lot else going for them. Yeah, just like the first bit of the taste, it is really thirst quenching. It's quite wet, but then I think it's that bitterness, that lasting bitterness that maybe not instantly, but I think it gradually dries your mouth out, and you just want to sip more. But it's really well balanced. It's a good beer. I'll be looking for more of their beers. I mean, I saw a lager, pale ale. Oh, career opportunities. So
Beer namer,
yeah,
I think, is probably number one on their career opportunities.
yeah. But yeah, that's an old school IPA, and
Perfect.
I seldom get those anymore. Okay, so they have a lager, a pale ale, IPA, and a milk stout. And that looks like it.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Perfect.
I miss beers like these.
We
I
do
miss
need more. We do need
bitter
more beers like that.
IPAs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really good.
Good. I'll jump into the Pomona Island. It's very light. It's super hazy. It's almost a block of colour. You can barely see through that. It frothed a lot, and I don't think that's down to the beer. It's probably more to the bumpy car ride back earlier from the shop. But I only poured maybe a third, and it frothed sort of most of the way up, and with each pour, it kept sort of kept its fizz to it. You don't get, even though it has this big head and stuff, you don't get any of that. It's not that carbonated at all in the flavour. It's very light, but I'm getting some nice flavours through straight away, and that is kind of all it's doing. I'll try and describe those flavours, but there's not much more going on apart from this nice mix of different tastes running through the sort of the full.
Yeah, I was very tempted to pick up a Pomona Island last time I went to the beer shop. I was like, I haven't had one of those in a while.
So it's interesting. It's got those sort of very light, very sort of sweet but slightly dialed back tropical fruits in there. Maybe a little bit kind of not necessarily kind of like watermelony, but it's got a little bit of that to it. There's maybe a little bit of orange in there as well. I think the strata is and the oats is giving it this nice sort of creaminess to it as well. So in the body, even though it's only about 4.8, it's not big bodied. It's quite light, but it's not thin. And there's just those oats and maybe the strata just kind of adding to that creamy sort of mouthfeel and kind of flavour to it as well. But it's very, very easy. I can't remember which beer I had recently as well, which had this slight kind of bubblegummy flavour to it as well. And this definitely has a little bit of that sort of this candy kind of sweetness in there as well. I don't know what the Eldorado's doing. With Eldorado, I kind of expect a bit more of a bigger kind of flavour, but I'm not getting kind of much on that. I think it may give me a little bit more as I drink it, and it kind of unfolds perhaps, and sort of, you know, halfway through the can I might start to get something on the back end. But at the moment, it's just this kind of initial, very sweet, tropical, light, fruity flavour kind of coming through. I try and describe those mix of fruits as I have done, but it's almost kind of edging on like lilt. If anyone remembers lilt, I don't even know if that exists anymore.
I don't know, but I remember what it tastes like.
I don't remember the last time I've seen the can of it, to be fair.
Yes, which is, again, maybe orangey, maybe a touch of pineapple in there. It definitely feels like it's got maybe something sort of very light and sweet, like watermelon as well. So that's kind of what I'm getting from it in this sort of initial taste. So, yeah, very nice, very easy. Quite dry for a lighter beer. I don't know whether I'm just expecting it to last a little bit longer than it does, but it kind of hits you with this nice light and refreshing sort of flavour, but fades into this dryness quite quickly, which is surprising, but quite good because I'm instantly kind of going back to it.
I think with my beer, it is dry, but I think my palate has just become accustomed to it, and it's got a bit of a longer finish, and it's like not going back for it as soon as I was before. So maybe you'll warm up to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And these, I picked both of these beers up earlier today. Both were in the fridge. Both went straight into my fridge, probably towards the back. So they're maybe, sat at something like 5 degrees or something. I got them straight from the fridge to bring them up, so they've been sat here for 20 minutes maybe. So yeah, they're maybe not at their kind of optimum, 6 to 8 or something like that. Maybe a little bit sort of lighter. So yeah, it may just present a little bit more as the evening goes on. So they are what Lucy and I are drinking this evening. Adam, you were on the Pepsi again, did you say?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
my customary Pepsi.
Perfect.
One day he's going to surprise us and bring a Coca-Cola or something.
I was expecting the Smirnoff and Dr. Pepper for the evening.
I mean, I can maybe do that in a couple of weeks' time.
Nice. Good. When we get you back on, we did say the last time that we would get you back for the Ghost of Tsushima expansion, which comes out in the next couple of days. Again, which none of us have played.
No, well, we don't have an endless Sony.
Well, I've tried. But yeah, so
you can't get in an in with Sony. None of us can, to be honest. Yeah.
If I'm not careful, they're likely to wreck my PlayStation.
No. Yes, that's what I'm expecting. As soon as I hit that, what is it, upgrade to the Director's Cut edition, and then I have to download probably the entire game as a digital version rather than the disc I've got. But I've still probably got to have the disc in to authenticate the digital version that I've upgraded from, or some bullshit like that. I'll probably play it. It will suddenly go and just take off through my roof out into the sky like the Harrier jump jet it is.
Yeah, that wouldn't be surprising.
Yeah.
We need a bit of time to be playing that, I think, once it comes out.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, when I eventually play Horizon Zero Dawn and God of War on that thing, it'll just absorb into like a black hole, and it's like can't do it. Sorry.
It's been so fast. You've actually worked out how to get just unlimited energy forever. You just need to harness it in some way.
Or something like that, and it's just I can now make water out of air.
Thanks, Sony.
Yeah. Thanks for saving the planet, Sony.
Brilliant. So we will kick off talking about kind of the games that we have played over the last week. Adam, I know through our chats, you haven't had much chance to play anything kind of new.
Yeah, I played a bit more of Samurai Warriors 5, but I spent most of the last week or so procrastinating my way into a hole. By doing nothing of any use whatsoever to anybody, apart from a couple of decent things, to be fair, but they haven't come out yet. But yeah, I could have played a lot more of Samurai Warriors 5 and didn't, because that would have been productive. And then that didn't fit with the schedule, apparently. My brain was in a weird place doing that. But I played some more of it, and I've kind of settled on the two main things that that I'm not gelling with the game. We talked about it the last time I was on.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of still trying to really pin down exactly what it was that wasn't quite gelling with, like, in that way, even though I was enjoying the game. And I've still got I'll come back to write about it, but I've still got plenty of the kind of story stuff in that to get through. I want to finish kind of most of that stuff off before I then sit down and do here's my final thoughts on everything that the game does. It's kind of article, but
Yeah.
The two things I settled on is stuff I think it brought up. The first one being the lack of impact in some of the combat. There's that disconnect where some of the hits don't feel like they're landing and actually hitting anything. When you take damage in the game, a lot of the time it doesn't really register until you look at the health bar and go, "Oh crap! I have less of it than I thought I did." Some bits and pieces like that don't ruin the game, but they are just a little bit. It's just that tiny bit less satisfying
Yeah.
than it would be if I felt like I had that kind of feedback in it. And the other thing is, again, I think I mentioned that kind of going through the levels, it doesn't really, like, each battle are like arcade kind of style stages that are all set up, and you sort of play through them, and they've got objectives laced through them and stuff, and it doesn't really reward you for, like, clearing the battlefield of enemies in the way that kind of a lot of the older kind of warrior style games did, or at least the way I played them did. They're a bit more focused on having you kind of go through the objectives and find the some of them are necessary to go through the kind of the battle sort of as it was historically or as it is in the narrative of the game sort of style, and there are also extra objectives that are hidden from you to begin with that you have to kind of stumble across, which is like going to the right place on the map and like, oh, you discovered the enemy ambush before they could actually spring it on you, so you get to kill them all. It rewards you in that kind of sense, but it doesn't reward you in that kind of weird. There's a weird completionist part of me that goes, clear the field of enemies.
Yeah.
Like, you go clear it. It doesn't
Every
really.
last one of them.
Yeah. It doesn't.
Genocide.
Yeah, there's like the way the maps are set up. There's the different paths and stuff through things, and there's like little kind of like gateways where like new enemies kind of spawn into the maps. And you can, there's a wee character there. It's like a captain or whatever, or a gate captain or whatever they're called, and if you defeat them, your side sort of takes it over, and then it's your allies that kind of spawn in, like, and it's just the regular soldiers and stuff like that. It doesn't really matter that much, but like, taking those over and stuff doesn't really help in any way. The way the game's designed, they feel almost kind of superfluous to anything. They're just kind of there because they've been a part of their kind of level design for so long. They just have them there. Whereas, again, going back to like the Dynasty Warriors 3 and kind of 4 and 5 days, like in PS2 era, which is kind of where my heart longs to be.
Yeah.
With this stuff a lot of the time, which does kind of cloud our judgment a wee bit on them. Taking those over mattered because the enemies would keep coming, and if they hit you, you knew about it.
Yeah.
So, clearing the field, clearing the enemies to get to those gateways to, I think in some of them you couldn't take them over, you were just like shutting them down essentially, was a kind of important facet of clearing the levels and making it so that you got through the enemies and you felt like you were winning the battle as opposed to I completed some objectives. So we won, apparently. I mean, the entire map is red with enemies, but we win. So, because that just doesn't sit quite right with me. But that's just how they've kind of set up the design for it. They're focusing more on the go through the objectives and do this and that, and worry about your combo count and stuff and try and get that as high as possible and defeat as many enemies as possible and all that. But it's not really focusing in on the actually clearing the stage or anything like that, which is just different, and that's an aspect of it that I'm not as keen on as maybe the developers would hope, I would imagine. But it doesn't ruin the game or anything. It's still a good fun time when you're actually sitting down and playing it and wrecking your way through everybody.
Does Samurai Warriors feel, because they're on their 5th game, whereas Dynasty Warriors is on its like 9th or potentially 10th, kind of taking out kind of spin-offs and all of those kinds of things. Does Samurai Warriors feel a little bit more kind of experimental? Like they're trying out kind of new things that may then feature maybe more in the Dynasty Warriors kind of series? Because I think you'd be not hard pressed to find people who hadn't heard of Dynasty Warriors, but it feels like Dynasty Warriors is a much bigger IP than, say, Samurai Warriors is. And from kind of what you're saying with all of these little implementations and things like that, it sounds like they're trying things out, trying to kind of refine the new sort of, or a different style of play. Because I remember the last Dynasty Warriors game got a lot of flack for certain changes that it had made.
Yeah, well, yeah. In terms of the main line numbered games, there is a lot more in terms of spin-offs and stuff. But in terms of the mainline numbered games, Dynasty Warriors would be the bigger franchise. Not 100% sure why necessarily, apart from
Just
maybe it was
longer
first.
running, perhaps.
Possibly. It's also maybe a slightly better known time period, and that might be why. It's one of them. Or maybe they just happened to release a game at just the right moment one year or whatever, and that's it. It hit the zeitgeist in a way that Samurai Warriors hasn't had the chance to. I can't really speak to that. I stumbled across them through my uncle who happened to have one of them, and then I played them from there, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Being younger at the time, so I wasn't up to date with the goings on in the industry or anything at the time, but it's one of those. One of the misconceptions with those games is that they're all the same, and they're not, because, as you were saying, Ben, like, I don't think they don't necessarily feel experimental, but pretty much every single game has had at least one kind of specific thing that they've changed in them. Again, I can't talk too much about that in terms of Samurai Warriors because I haven't really played any of the previous ones. But like the way the Dynasty Warriors games have ran is they've changed them up every single time. So 3 focused on you. The story mode was you played a character and you went through 7 stages with that character, which had a combination of a couple of battles at the beginning that it tended to be one or the other of kind of 2 or 3, and there was a couple of kind of end battles, and there was a few in the middle that, generally speaking, were picked based on what battles that character was actually at historically. But obviously, if you're playing as a character who dies in a battle, you're then with them still, and it would continue, so you'd still play the other battles after it, sort of thing. That's how that one was structured. Then Dynasty Warriors 4 went down a more, it was each kingdom story that you went through, and as you went through each battle, you were given a selection of characters to play as.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that were at the battles, and then you would unlock them as you went through, kind of that way, and then you could go back and play all the way through with characters you preferred and stuff, as in like a free mode or whatever, as you could in 3 as well. Then 5 went back to doing it by character, but it had a lot more like in battle cutscenes and things which are relevant between actual characters and events in the battles that were relevant to the characters. So like for example, there's 2 characters in the Wu Kingdom, which is Ling Tong and Gan Ning, and they go from hating one another because Gan Ning kills Ling Tong's father when he's fighting for another side, and then joins Wu later, and so they have a bit of a, you know, I hate you, know of why sort of relationship, until eventually one of them saves another one during a battle, and then they become sort of buddies, and and you get to kind of play that through in the battles in a way that you didn't have in the previous ones.
Yeah.
Then I think I mentioned when I was talking about this the last time I was on, Dynasty Warriors 6 completely changed the combat system.
Yeah.
What I think it was called the Renbu system, which was basically the combo was an infinite loop, and you had a bar that filled as you actually successfully attacked enemies, and then it would drop down either over time or if you got successfully attacked. And as the bar filled, you got kind of more and more attacks within the combo before it looped back round, so they became more and more kind of elaborate and powerful as you went through. So the idea was to keep building up the combo, the bar all the time, and keeping that running the whole way. Then 7 and 8 went back to the kind of normal combat system, which is a certain number of square attacks, which is normal attacks, and triangle is heavy attacks. And depending on how many times you press square and then hit triangle, you would have different attacks that you would do. It went back to, that's the kind of traditional system. It went back to that, as well as having, again, focusing more on kind of the story of the kingdoms and playing through them that way. And then 9 went and did 2 major changes where they changed the combat system and they made it open world. Whereas games up to this point have been the very kind of arcade style, and kind of the trappings of them. Each of the battles were stages, and there's a time limit, and you would get a score at the end, even though it doesn't really matter based on how well you did. So you could try and complete them faster. You could try and defeat more and more enemies to kind of. There was leaderboards and stuff like that, even though I've never really paid attention to that stuff. But all that stuff has been in the games. It's very arcade style kind of presentation as you move through. Like, that's what the battles were. And then Dynasty Warriors 9 made it open world, and that's not necessarily a change I'm against as such, but it didn't work for me in this implementation. And I think in part that's because they also changed the combat system, and that's 2 major changes to make to a game like that you should probably have stuck to one. I think that they would have had an easier time of it if they'd stuck to one or the other, because they would have been able to devote more time to, really fine-tuning it and making sure it worked perfectly.
Yeah.
Might have still not worked for me even with that, but that's what they did. Yeah. So they do make changes to them as they go through, and Samurai Warriors has always played differently to Dynasty Warriors in terms of how the attacks are structured, and there's some differences. Like, Dynasty Warriors doesn't have the hyper attacks that Samurai Warriors has, which is where if you just press triangle from the start, it's sort of like wide-ranging, kind of fast-moving attacks that help you take up like the mobs of enemies, and sort of helps you group them together to attack.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's a different way of moving about the battlefields because you can move about kind of quicker.
Yeah.
Because you're doing that and kind of cutting through the enemies as you go, sort of thing, until you come up against kind of special enemies that have got like shields and stuff or whatever that block your progress, and then you have to deal with them slightly differently. So there's always been differences between the two, and it is interesting because one of the things I'm interested in with this is whether or not this will feed back into what will be Dynasty Warriors 10 eventually.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to have any real impact, I don't think, on the next Dynasty Warriors, which will be Nine Empires, which is a spin-off, which is due to come out early next year, I think.
Okay.
Is it later this year? I think it's early next year it's due to come out. So that's well into production already anyway. It's a bit too late for that. But it might formulate some of their plans for what they do with the next numbered one, which would be 10. And it's also interesting to see what they'll do with what the next step's going to be with Samurai Wars, because I can't remember if I mentioned the last time I was on when we spoke about it, but Samurai Wars 5 has really cut down how much of the story of the historical time period is. It has in it.
I think you mentioned that, yeah.
Yeah, so previously, for the most part, in Dynasty Warriors and in Samurai Wars, they've taken these two historical eras, the Three Kingdoms era in China, and I think they call it the Warring States period in Japan, or the Sengoku period in Japan. And they sort of try to cover the whole time period in that single game, usually via you play as a character and you go through however many battles or whatever, and then you move on to the next character sort of thing, and then you've cleared it with that person, and then you go through it that way, and that's kind of how you would learn about them. And what they've done with Samurai Wars 5 is they've cut it right down, and they're focusing primarily on two characters' stories which interlink, which is Nobunaga Oda and I'm going to mispronounce this so badly because I can't see it written down, Mitsuhide Akechi. I'm confident about Akechi, probably should, but I might have mispronounced Mitsuhide his first name, and I apologise if I have. But yeah, so it's focusing on their two stories, and so the characters in the game, there's a lot less of them, because it's only the ones relevant to the stories that they're telling in this period that they're really showing off. And so that means that there's a lot of fan favourite characters who aren't in the game this time around, because they cut a lot of them.
Right.
So they're not dealing with the entire Sengoku period, they're dealing just with the story of Nobunaga Oda and Mitsuhide Akechi, and the characters they interact with and how that interlinks. And so you go through, I've been through Nobunaga's story now, I still get Mitsuhide's to do properly. That's why I want to finish that before I go on to kind of give him a final thoughts in a formal written down capacity. So I'm interested to see how they go about the next step of this, because they've previously done, like, Samurai Warriors 4, I'm sure has Samurai Warriors 4 and Samurai Warriors 4-2, going very Final Fantasy with the naming. And I'm not really sure entirely how those interlink with one another, if 4-2 is just kind of like a revamp for like a different console generation, or if it's if there's any major change. I really don't know on that front. But I'm interested to see if they go, because there's plenty of options available to Koei Tecmo now and Omega Force, the developers, that they maybe wouldn't have had in the past in terms of like offering up DLC and stuff before. So they have the option of going kind of in a couple of different ways. They can go direct sequel in that way, do 5-2, introduce another couple of characters whose story they want to tell, and build it out that way, and maybe do a couple of those over however many years. They can just release them as DLC or expansion passes or whatever, and go, here's a character, and they'll have X number of missions and story modes and whatever else, and you can buy them that way. Or will they just go Samurai Warriors 6 focuses on these characters, and it's exactly the same format, but with telling a different part of the story of the historical period, focusing on someone else.
Yeah, it seems like they've got a lot of options in where they can
Yeah.
take it next.
Yeah, and that's interesting, and that's interesting obviously for the Samurai Warriors side of it, but it's also interesting whether they do that moving across to the Dynasty Warriors side of it, because there's a lot of different ways you could split that game up in the same way. You know, either focusing on two specific characters whose stories kind of interlink, because there is a lot of characters who pop up in a few different places or switch sides from one kingdom to another, and you could have, you know, and there's lots of very interesting stories and personal dynamics that go on and rivalries and stuff that could be interesting to focus in on in a way. Or the stories of the kingdoms themselves are very interesting and how they come about and how they fight with one another. So you could focus on Dynasty Warriors 10 could focus on the Shu kingdom, and then 11 could focus on the Wu kingdom, and then the Wei kingdom, and so on. Or you could pick specific characters, because there's no end of interesting.
A lot of
matchups.
history.
Yeah, absolutely.
True.
Yeah, well, it's
Thousands of years.
yeah. Well, I mean, specifically the Three Kingdoms period is about 100 years, but
Yeah, they could do a game per year.
yeah, it's
For the
100
rest of
years,
time.
and,
Yeah.
you know, like and hundreds of characters potentially that could be involved.
Exactly.
And as I say, there's no end of very interesting dynamics and stuff between characters, either within a kingdom who have rivalries or rivalries across different lines, or that you can. There's so many ways you could do it with contrasting them. It's like you get the very super loyal retainer, or the one who's having doubts about his lord. There's all that sort of stuff. You can contrast their kind of two journeys and how one crosses over to the other side. There's so many kind of interesting ways you could cut through them in that way and present them in that more focused, instead of having 500 characters. We're going to focus on these two specifically and these 20 odd that are important to their story, and that'll be it. And that's potentially a much more sustainable way of making these games,
True.
because they can't keep getting bigger forever, and especially in terms of the rosters, because for all the games are the same every time. They're different every time. They always update the character models. Most of them end out with new costumes and stuff and updates. They change the weapons all the time.
It's basically
sometimes causing a lot of aggravation because people like the weapons that some characters have. And all these sorts of things. There's so much work that goes into each of them, even though they're the same. Every time. I'm saying that very sarcastically for the audio. There's lots of interesting ways they could go about doing that in particular. That I'm curious to see how they go about it, because they haven't, unless I've missed any news, they haven't detailed how they're going to continue, particularly with Samurai Warriors 5, what their next plans are. I mean, in terms of where Nobunaga's story leaves off, they do set up what could potentially be the characters that they're going to focus on in the sequel, expansion, whatever they're going to do. But until they actually announce it, I don't know. They do have options, though. So
Nice.
I'll be curious to see what they do.
Good. Almost the story of where they could go and what they could do next is slightly more interesting in actually the what you experience kind of through the game. I don't know. I've not played it. I will not state that as fact. Just an observation. Let's move on from Muso style games. I've got a title I want to have a little chat about, which we're sticking around with weapons, and that because I want to talk about Boyfriend Dungeon. Lucy, I know you've played a very small amount of it.
About 20 minutes.
Okay, nice.
Quite honestly.
Fair. So you've kind of gone through
The tutorial,
and,
basically.
yeah, you've that first 20 minutes, and I would say anyone who has Game Pass should investigate Boyfriend Dungeon and see if it's a game they want to progress with, because that first 20 minutes will give you a taste of everything that this kind of game has to offer.
Okay.
So, Boyfriend Dungeon is a kind of dungeon delving, loose dating sim, right? Mm-hmm. It sets you up as a character who appears in this town, has no confidence, has gone there to spend the summer, to hang out with your cousin, and to kind of grow and work on themselves a little bit and stuff. And your cousin very quickly says, "Hey, you've never been on a date with anyone before. I'm gonna help you in this area of your life."
It was very abrupt.
It is very abrupt. Yes, your cousin is like, "Hey, dude, you gotta get laid. What's going on?"
You mean it's not, "Hey, do you want to go bowling?"
Yeah, no.
Doesn't phone you constantly.
I'm going to send you to a car key party right now. That's what it was. That's basically what it was.
It is almost like that. But the twist to this is that the weapons that you use in the dungeons are people. So within this world of Boyfriend Dungeon, there are humans who can become other forms which are weapons. So the game kind of poises itself in a way that you can increase your relationship with various characters by using them as weapons in the dungeon. And I think it kind of works quite well in the balance that it gives between the dungeon side of things and then it's not quite a dating sim in terms of the freedom that you get around what you can do with characters, but it's like a relationship building game almost. So I went into this very much as me kind of thing, right? And I was presented very early on with two characters, both male, who I'm like, okay, I'm not really feeling the vibe of these couple of characters. And then this other female character turned up, and I'm like, okay, from my own perspective, from what this character is saying, this is who would kind of chat to a little bit more. But the weapon was a dagger rather than, say, the big scimitar that the first guy kind of was. But I don't think the game penalizes you in terms of kind of like play style, in being like, right, I play in this very certain way when I play, like Moonlighter or another kind of dungeon style kind of game in what I kind of want to do. I played with a few different weapons, and all of them, whilst they've got different abilities, whilst you are doing the dungeon combat element of things, don't really pull too much in one way in terms of playstyle. They feel different in what you're using, but it was never, I can only use like a double-handed glaive, or I can only use the scimitar, or I can only use the fast attack kind of dagger sort of thing. The game does well enough in balancing all of those combat styles out that you're never sort of forced to use one over the other. I think it's nice that it's got that freedom to it, that it allows you more to link through the narrative and that relationship building in who you want to sort of take and build a relationship with kind of through it. There's been, I think, a lot of chat in the last few weeks on Twitter and in the sort of in the press and with consumers about kind of certain characters and how they're portrayed, and people being quite angry and telling the developers that actually this is something they should kind of remove from this game. And this comes from sort of the villain of the game, who turns out to be a very clingy person who you have a very short interaction with, and is then very is very
invasive.
Invasive, yes, invasive, absolutely. And a lot of people have been, getting a little bit angry about sort of this, and even gone in on the voice actor kind of on Twitter about the character and stuff. And I've got lots of thoughts about this, right? So I'll get into those in a second. But Boyfriend Dungeon, it's fluid. The combat is great. The kind of the dating element of it works quite well to be sort of dynamic enough that you're not, going, hey, I want to take this character over here to this kind of date, and I want to take this character. Things present themselves and very much come from those characters. So those characters kind of say, hey, do you want to go for a coffee? I will be here. If you do, come and meet me. And you can say, hey, I don't, either yes or no. And then you don't have to, even then, don't have to go to that part on the map as well. Yeah. So it kind of gives you those options. And I think it does that kind of, that balance between those two things very well.
My very early impression was, you say that it was, you saw these two men, the first weapons you get. And even me as a straight woman, the guy with like the 8-pack and rippling abs,
the little
and,
goatee,
and flowing tresemme hair, and he was like, "Hey, I've just met you. Do you want to go on a date?" And I was like, "Okay, I like the suspension of belief in like games, but I was just like, this is too far. There's no way." It's just like, you just met me. You're like a Greek god chiseled out of stone. This would never happen. I was like, okay, I need to go to bed, and I'm just gonna.
That's it. Like there's no option. There's no option to just instantly nut him.
Because you would get killed by his 8-pack.
You'd bounce straight off of him across the road into the building. Yeah, absolutely.
This would never happen. And it's like, I've played games that are very like saccharine and, just like, happy and uplifting. And it's not like, all the implications of dating and all this and that. And it seems like this game gets into it a bit more, but I was just like, this is a bit too unbelievable. I've just met this guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's a GQ model.
Yeah.
And it's like,
but so later characters kind of present themselves a little bit better to you. You can have platonic relationships with all of these characters, and you can kind of not take kind of relationships much further, but you won't then benefit from more abilities that these weapons kind of have. You need to build those relationships to get that. So you're tied in a little bit with going, I want to use the abilities or this weapon, so this is what I kind of have to do. But as I said, the play styles don't feel that much. You're not inhibited by only going, well, I want to use this character, so I've only got this sort of set. There was nothing that didn't make me feel like I could switch very easily between all of these different kind of weapons. And there's a cat in it, and the cat is a set of like knuckle dusters, so you're getting like right up close and personal when using it. So it's a 10 out of 10 game because you can go on dates with a fucking cat.
Furry option unlocked. Okay, let's do it.
I was going to ask you, Ben.
Yeah.
What you found was your primary motivation. Did you find that you would go, I want to have a deeper relationship with that character, so I'll take them into the dungeon, or did you go, I still prefer having the big sword or whatever?
No,
did you find that you leaned one way or the other?
Yes,
more often
I did. Yeah, very much, and it was absolutely the first. It took me a couple of runs to realise that actually I was taking the same character through each level of the dungeon, and you run through the map, you kill all of the kind of enemies that are within it, and the dungeons are made up of your fears. So the character that you are is a little bit kind of reclusive, doesn't like communication that much, so it was like telephones, mobile phones, which kind of snaps at you and things like this. But I definitely was taking through Valeria, who was the character that kind of clicked with me first through, and then hitting a level and it's saying max relationship boost, and I was just going, oh yeah, I'll just take her in again, rather than boosting the relationship between all of the available characters.
Yeah, just for the sake of it.
Exactly.
You're going more for that character specifically.
Yes, yeah, very much. And I think that did work in that I understood kind of the abilities that they were kind of giving me, and I liked how the sort of the dagger worked. But that wouldn't have stopped, that shouldn't have stopped me really from then saying, let's actually go with I can't remember the character's name, but the guy that's a rapier, and take him through and build up the relationship by fighting and finding brief moments through the dungeon to have a conversation with them about, which would have built that meter with them as well.
I think that's just a thing in games though. Like once you get a weapon and you just become accustomed to it, it's like you don't really change a lot.
Absolutely.
You know, outside of like sexuality and preference and all of that, it's like I've got my starting pistol. I've upgraded it enough in the skill tree. I'm comfortable. I don't want my sniper rifle.
And there were other characters who I encountered kind of later on, because time sort of passes in this game, in that you know each thing is another day that's passed, and actually the game does present to you and say, hey, it's the end of the summer, you're about to leave, here is now the final thing that you know, and very much pops up saying this is the end of the game. Go off and do whatever you need to do. So time isn't really, doesn't at least appear from my first playthrough to be an issue.
Interesting.
But you kind of and these other characters that I'd kind of not become attached to, but other characters were like, yeah, I can absolutely have like a platonic relationship with this character, and was presented with the options to be able to do that. And they would say, hey, is this a date? And I'm like, nah, it's not a date. We're just hanging out. And they were like, cool, that's fine. Let's still go, and you can use me as a weapon to go kind of through the dungeon, and we can still build a relationship around that, so you can still kind of unlock these things. But coming back to Eric, who is the dickhead character, he's presented in a way which comes across as very, as you said, Lucy, kind of invasive. And I was lukewarm on the character. I hadn't picked up on this at first. And he then in a message said something about the cousin character, and I'm like, wow, that's a really dickhead thing to say. Like I'm not going to bother with this character anymore. I'm done with this character. But as the game goes on and the character becomes more invasive and sends you gifts even though you've told them that you're not interested, and then has some kind of stalker level elements to them as well, which people have been saying, you know, we need more kind of trigger warnings on these sorts of things, and that's fine. Yeah, absolutely, put that in. But I wholeheartedly disagree with this character needing to be rewritten or removed from the game completely, which some people have asked for. Basically because this game made me think in a different way than I previously had about the interactions that some people will have in the real world with other people. This kind of unrequited attention and sending of gifts and things made me think, fuck, people, there will be a bunch of people who will experience this kind of thing for people. I've never had that. I've never even thought about that kind of thing. Yet this game has opened me up to thinking, Jesus, there will be people who have experienced this, and this is absolutely something that probably most of the people who are saying this shouldn't be in the game should be thinking about, and a perspective that maybe some people haven't had before. And it's the joy of games, right? To be able to put you in someone else's shoes and bring in different experiences and allow you to live kind of others' lives. We don't need to be Master Chief again. We don't need to be Nathan Drake again. We don't need to kill 5,000 people.
What Samurai Warriors 5.
I mean, there's a place for that, absolutely. But there's also a place for making you uncomfortable and bringing in other elements and making you think about these things and have you reflect about the real world and what other people go through. And I think Boyfriend Dungeon does that very, very well. And it puts you in a situation which is uncomfortable, that you don't want to be in. It gives you a resolution to that and gives you some, I suppose, at least the characters, some level of closure from that. But that's something that you experience as a finish almost to the game, which maybe a lot of people who go through this kind of experience never actually get. So I think Boyfriend Dungeon is a game that a lot of people should play, just to get you through the different way of thinking about things and opening you up more to understanding other people's experience.
Yeah, I think you're coming. I agree with what you're saying, but I think every woman has experienced that once in their lifetime. So I think all women know about this and know the telltale signs of it. I agree with you saying, like, some people need to know that it's like it does start with very benign things, and it can and often does result in things that are just harrowing. And it's like it's a slope that a lot of people can see and a lot of people point to it, but some people just, unless they're educated, and as you say, Boyfriend Dungeon could be a way that people like wake up to these things. It's just like they don't know it. They see it as, oh, that was a nice, gesture, you know, and usually that person becomes manipulative in like saying, I did this nice thing, and
but it's a compliment.
Yeah.
You should be happy.
But aside from that, I agree, Ben. It's people going after the developers and the voice actors. And you say going after, I mean like death threats, and it's like that isn't acceptable in any circumstance.
Absolutely.
Let alone
that's worse.
Yes,
that's literally worse than
that's
the thing
worse
the characters do.
Exactly. That's worse than having a game that wants to portray this character, wants to, bring awareness to it and speak to their own, presumably their own experiences. But there's a trigger warning, and that will be triggering for a lot of people, a lot of women especially. And I think, maybe call attention to it, as some people respectfully did, and they did update the game with, saying like, this is in the game.
Yeah.
You don't need to play it if this is going to be traumatic.
Absolutely.
For you, and people playing it, feeling traumatized, rightly so, but then having to go at the creators. It's just one massive spiral of crap, and it's sad,
It is.
I didn't know that how much. I mean, I can understand why this game had a lot of buzz. It's very inclusive. It's very it reaches a wide audience of people, but the amount of sludge that has happened since, it's sad, especially as you're saying, Ben. Like, it seems like a pretty decent game.
Absolutely.
It's kind of ironic that they're getting shit on because their character does exactly what they wanted it to do very, very well by portraying that terrible behavior very accurately and very powerfully. The fact that if it didn't have a trigger warning to begin with, that's obviously a valid criticism. That's fair enough. But as you're saying, in terms of the content, if it seems like they're getting flack for doing their job well, which is sort of weirdly ironic.
Absolutely. And as Lucy said, it is a very inclusive game. There's you can pick whether you want to be male or female. You're presented with male and female and non-binary characters who you can date. I don't know if there are any trans characters. There are characters I didn't experience and didn't get to spend sort of any time with and things. So there's more game for me to play, more characters to kind of get to know and things like that. But it's definitely one that I think isn't. It's a game like, and we always kind of say, come back to it, like, you don't need to play every game, right? Not every game is made for you. Experience things, try different games out, try different things. That's how we grow as humans. You know, you pick up different books. You know the genres of books that you like. You probably know the genres of games that you like. You know the genres of films that you like. You probably know the genres of games that you like. If this doesn't appeal to you, just don't play it, or don't then jump on the bandwagon of said things. And yes, there is criticism to be had, and that can be done in very specific ways, and should be. Everything can be criticised in the world, and should be. That's how again products change, and how people grow, and how teams are able to then do something next with their next project and things. But we cannot get to a point where someone has wanted to tell a story, and we're like, and consumers is like, no, don't want that story, sorry, change it.
Yeah. It's not like it's offensive to any kind of, group of people or anything like that. It's simply the story that they wanted to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like there are so many games that tell these kind of stories, I can't remember, like, if Found last year, which was one of the most profound games that I've ever played, and it was, it tells a story, of someone who's trans, and it has some really dark moments in it.
Yeah.
But I can imagine that's triggering for like anyone, to be honest. But it doesn't. It seems like there's been this perfect shitstorm around this game, and I don't get it. It's like there's so many games that tell these kinds of stories, and I don't know why people have just dogpiled on this game in particular, which is a shame, because it's just like we should be talking about the game, and yes, its themes, but we shouldn't be doing it in a way where it's like, let's protect these developers from death threats. It's absurd.
We should be talking about why that character is shitty, not why shitting on the game or shitty.
Yes, absolutely.
And the developers.
It's bizarre, and it's a shame that that this is the cloud over that game.
Absolutely. And maybe we'll return to it, Lucy, if you do put a bit more time into it. We can have sort of a further conversation around it.
I don't know. My biggest fear in that game is going on this date with that Adonis. So I said yes, and I was like, what am I doing? I said yes, Ben. I can't get out of it now.
You can. Just don't go. Just ghost him. It's fine.
Ghost him, yeah.
That's rude.
I mean, that's a problem in itself.
Yes.
Don't be that person.
I played the game about a shitty person, and I became one instead. That's a very meta take on things.
Oh dear. Let's open up some more beers and move on. But yes, I think Boyfriend Dungeon is another game we'll probably return to discuss further, and hopefully more about the game. Past my brief kind of description of kind of what was going on in my initial sort of thoughts on it, about the game more so than the shit sort of surrounding it within the last kind of week or so.
It'd be nice to, definitely.
So, beers, Lucy, what beer are you going to be opening now?
I've got a beer from Beak Brewery. There's a bear on it, and it's called Gurr, Gurr.
Nice.
And it's a West Coast IPA, 7%. There we go. They call it a Californian-inspired India Pale Ale brewed with Citra, Centennial, Chinook, and Amarillo hops for aromas of lumberyards. Seen that one before. Pine needles, preserved lemons, sun-bathed Yosemite granite, spoomy Pacific driftwood. Adam must be like thinking, you hipster beer drinkers with your
I'm still just getting over the fact that lumberyard.
Yeah. I was like, that's not a descriptor I've ever seen before, and it gets worse. Because sun-bathed Yosemite granite, I've never eaten granite. Don't know what that tastes like. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, it's the taste of a lumberyard, not the smell.
Well, one of the two. What does an Axeman smell like? It's been working out in the heat.
Just standard metrosexual, isn't he? I'm gonna drink Double Dream House, which is from Left Handed Giant. It is 8.5%, a hazy double IPA which has got Citra Cryo, Mosaic Cryo, Galaxy, and Vic Secret in it. It's a juiced up version, as I believe, of Dream House, which was a pale ale that they put out occasionally. Nice little gold top can, lovely little sort of metallic sheen. Picture of some tigers lounging about in a dream house. So yeah, I shall crack this. Lucy, I see you smelling already, so we'll come straight back to
I'm
you.
trying to get the lumber yards and the Yosemite. Smells like Yosemite Sam.
Oh, man.
Yeah, quite a subtle smell. Not quite getting lumber
Quiet
yards.
lumber
Definitely
yard.
getting pine needles. So I'll give it that. A bit piney, bit citrusy. It doesn't look like the last beer. The last beer looked more like a West Coast IPA than this one. This is like just darker than straw coloured. Very cloudy. Nice, about 1.5 finger, like foamy whitehead. Very nice.
Looks a bit sawdust coloured, maybe.
Exactly, sawdust colour. That's a good one. It is very smooth. I think probably the perfect temperature as well. Just slightly, it's been sitting out for a bit, but it's not too warm. That's really nice. Regardless of the many descriptors on the back of the can, it's I don't know where the West Coast inspiration comes in. This is very much like a New England light IPA or something. It's very fruity. It's
Soft and fruity.
Mostly fruit forward. Not really any bitterness.
Interesting. Considering the descriptors, it sounded like it was going to be this big bitter beer.
No. It's very piney, but it's not bitter. It's not like the last beer at all, but it's really good though. So, yeah, that's really nice. It's very fruit forward. A lot of citrus, a lot of more tropical fruit, like maybe a bit of like papaya in there.
Okay.
Oh, this is going down very easily. This is not going to last. This is really good. So, I don't know what all that stuff on the back was, but this is
Lies, obviously. Lies
It's
to
like-
distract you so that you would open it.
Yeah.
Does it feel like the
I'm
wrong
not
beer?
reading all that.
Yeah. Does it feel like the wrong beer has been put in the can?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
It's. I'm definitely getting that pininess, but it's hard to know what sun-bathed Yosemite granite is going to taste like.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely.
If it tastes like this, buy me some, some new teeth. Gonna be eating a lot of granite. Just put it in a blender and make a smoothie out of
Blackpool has
Yosemite
rock.
granite.
Birmingham has granite.
You mean I don't have to go to California to find some granite? Yeah, this is really good. No, none of it is like a West Coast inspired IPA though. I don't know what that is about.
No, fair. Yeah.
It is like they poured a different beer into the can, but
You'll see tomorrow a
cares?
recall notice for that beer.
yeah.
Mislabeled, please return. Like, oh well.
Whereas the first one did exactly what it said on the can. This one does the opposite, but it's kind of really good, so
Good.
who am I to complain?
Cool. Enjoy it. Sit there and take it all in. This
I'll be
Left-Handed Giant is an odd beer. It's an odd flavour. It's got this sort of like sweet, but not quite. Not like super sweet. More like sickly sweet kind of nose to it. And in the flavour, it's quite a thick kind of beer. It's almost orangey in colour. Super hazy. My camera just changed to make it much more yellow oddly than it was when I first put it up. That is the colour when presented it there. That orangey colour is definitely what it looks like. And in the flavour, you do get a little bit of sweetness, but it's dulled down almost instantly to more, ripe melon kind of flavours. It's got those slightly more earthy tones to it, but still remaining quite sweet. So I can see why the nose turned sort of a little bit kind of sickly sweet, because in the flavour, it sort of tries to it wants to be sweet all the way up here, but also pull it right down, so it isn't kind of too much, and that gives it almost this like aniseed kind of quality to it. It's not quite cherry, it's not the other way and being quite licorice. It's very sort of kind of aniseedy in there, which is an interesting flavour to throw in with a kind of an earthy end and a sweet end to it as well. This beer's kind of doing lots of different things, and feels a little bit confusing because of that.
Bit of a muddled beer, have we?
It is a little bit muddled. I mean, it tries to flow you through those kinds of flavours, but I think I'm on my fourth or fifth sort of sip. I'm a quarter of the way through the glass. Everything is being kind of overshadowed by this aniseed flavour, which it's 8 and a bit percent. It's a double IPA. Has a little bit of that kind of alcohol burn to it as well. So it presents itself as a bigger beer. You know that it is bigger, and I think that sweetness is maybe more the alcohol, which is again why it's a little bit more sickly on the nose, than it is from the hops, which was Citra, Mosaic, Galaxy, and Vic's Secret. So a combination which you would expect a little bit more of a fruity hit, but then giving you those sort of creamier, earthy notes as well in there. And it tries to do that, but I think both of those are kind of just smashing against each other, and the explosion has made this sort of aniseed flavour kind of in the middle of sort of what's going on. So you've got these periphery kind of flavours that sort of peak out, but this over explosion of kind of aniseed. It's odd. I'm gonna drink it.
I mean, aniseedy taste in that style of beer is a bit unusual, isn't it?
It is unusual, absolutely. It is very
maybe
unusual.
in a stout, but or like a Belgian double or something like that. But,
I mean, interesting, but very unusual. We'll see how that kind of plays out. And we'll come back to our beers and discuss all the beers we drank at the end of the episode. But Lucy, I want to jump into your topics for this week, because I know you've hit a few games over the last week to talk about.
As we briefly touched upon last week, I did play No Longer Home. Finished it, wrapped it up today. It's the kind of game that I want my Steam Deck to play on. It is it's a very narrative driven game. It's almost visual novel-esque, because the mechanic in the game that unlocks quite early into it is you're basically in these little dioramas, which is like these rooms in this one student house, and the mechanic that you get is, okay, now you can rotate the diorama so you can see the other like the other walls in the rooms, because like at first you're given this one perspective, and then it's like, okay, use the keyboard, A and D, to either rotate left and right, and it's like, okay, now you can see the other walls in the room. But it basically tells the story of it's drawn on real life experiences from the developers, the writers. Basically, they're in their last year of university in England, and they're packing up their student house, ready to go back home to. Their studies are finished, and it's like, what's next? and um, and you're basically the game is almost like 90% of the game is set in that student house, and it's about walking into the different rooms of the house. You're obviously sharing with some other students, and then just getting like these little bits of flavor text into what what their last year of university was like, where the characters see themselves going in the future. And there's this there's this cloud of anxiety because I mean, for anyone who's gone to university, it is like you've spent like 3 years not being a human being. You've spent 3 or 4 years being in some trash mammal, just drinking, partying, being around a group of people who, hopefully understand you. You found your niche. You found the people you enjoy spending time with, and it's like people go back to different parts of the country, or people just grow up, or move on, or get jobs, and it's like, yeah. And not to add to that, both of the two main characters who you sort of play as and choose dialogue options for are non-binary, and it's like one of them's going back to Japan, one of them is from England and is just going back down the road, and it's like, how are our families going to accept us? What do we do now? They're both art students, and it's like, well, how do we get a job in this economy? I'm not quite sure when it's set, because I finished university probably about 10 years ago, or something like that, and it's Jesus. And
I've witnessed that existential crisis just pass by you there. Oh my god.
Yeah, and but I don't think it matters what kind of timeline it's set in. There's nothing that suggests it's like, okay, this is clearly the 2000s because they have like Twitter or something like that. So it's like, I don't know when it's set, but I think it's universally for people, not just people graduating, but people just having a different change in life, moving house, or moving job, or moving across the country, etc. It's universal in that fact. The gameplay is limited, and it's like, okay, I came in expecting that. You're really just moving around this one student house quite slowly, and I think when you're looking into these rooms, which are really nicely detailed, and the art's nice. It's like it's got this nice muted colors, and like the characters don't have any distinguished features and stuff like this. Very, very soft and nice to look at. But when you're going through these rooms and looking at you're basically, okay, let me click on this towel or something like that, and it's like the character gives like, I don't know, a very small monologue or this little anecdote, and it's like, a lot of them, I'd say probably 75% of them are just like meh. It's like a lot of it is okay, this student housing is like, there's mold, there's holes in the wall, the house is about to fall down. It's like, yeah, I got it. I lived in
Standard.
student accommodation. Yep. I know what it's like to live in a house that's barely standing. I know what it's like to live in halls of residence that are barely standing and flood. But so it's like, yeah, I get it. It's like, yes, this could have been like one little anecdote, but it's like so many of the same things, and it's very meandering and very wishy-washy, like most of the writing. And then in between, you get this like really poignant like things that these characters say, and it's like, I wish the game was more of this. I wish the game was more actually getting into these characters, not just the crappy environment that they're living in, and how student accommodation is awful, but just, you know, their fears, their anxieties, their hopes, their dreams, and stuff like that. I think that was the best part of the game, where I think there's this whole like second act where you're basically playing this text adventure video game, and I just think it's like such superfluous fluff. And it's like, this doesn't need to be in the game. I think the last like kind of act where it was just the two main characters just lying in bed and talking about their lives, what would happen afterwards, how they, you know, how they think they didn't get the most out of university and most of the time there, and you know, just like their friend circles and moving away, moving apart from their old friends, and just how they've developed as humans. That is what I wanted the game to be more of, and I thought that was the more poignant and interesting part of the narrative. I didn't find walking around the house and just looking at, you know, random objects, as beautifully detailed as the environments were, was that interesting. And I wish the game was more. Even if it is just, you know, like, you can play a prologue, as we said, you know, last week. If the game was just two characters sitting there and you're just now and then clicking on dialogue options, I would have preferred that. I was just like, just give me the story, give me the good writing that I know these writers are capable of, because they've shown it in these brief flashes, and then throughout the whole of the last act, where it's like, yes, this is what I wanted more from the game. But yeah, it's a tough one. I wouldn't say I enjoyed every second of it, but I wouldn't say I had a miserable time either. It was
Okay.
I just wish it had more of that poignant writing in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
You wanted something that, and it's a game which its kind of aesthetic does remind me a little bit of Kentucky Route Zero. And
oh god, yeah, it wears those inspirations, honestly.
Absolutely,
and
and you wanted more of that sort of grandiose, not necessarily the grandiose
I get you.
elements of the environment, but those poignant kind of moments. You wanted more of those big hitting kind of dialogues and decisions and things, rather than just sort of, you know, rather than it being kind of like real life. Like, hey man, what's up tonight? Not much. Making pizza. Cool. See you in a bit.
Yeah, because it does. I mean, even down to like the font of the text, it looks like Kentucky Route Zero. Like those kind of dioramas, and that like they sort of peel away, and like furniture and walls float away into space, and there's kind of this magical realism in it as well, but it's so undercooked and underused, even in its like short runtime. And it's either I have no idea what this is, or this is very heavy-handed, where there's a literal embodiment of a demon which represents one of the characters' like depression and anxiety, and it doesn't work. It's like,
Sure.
It just feels like this was half an idea, too half-baked an idea to have any kind of lasting impression, which is a shame. And I think, like, I mean, to have Kentucky Route Zero as an inspiration, which I imagine it was. It's like that game was in development for like 10 years, so it's like, it's likely that this game had a look at that and just thought, I'm not saying this game was like made in the last year. It might have taken longer than that, but I think that might have been an inspiration. But I mean, Kentucky Route Zero is like probably the best writing in any game ever. So it's just like hard shoes to fill.
Absolutely.
But it's one of those where you have to be in the mood for a narrative game, and you have to be very much in the mood for a game that takes its time. It's like every time you clicked on one of the objects to look at, it's like the camera zooms in slowly. You pet the cat, so 10 out of 10, you can pet the cat. And then after you do that, the camera zooms out. And then you can move on to the next thing. So it's one of those where it's like, okay, I'm in the mood for something very, very slow, very
Yeah,
But,
and
games that are slow like that, I expect something, to be contemplative, meditative, and it's like this wasn't always that until like, especially the very last chapter.
but
Which
it sounds like
very
it really wants to be. With those
good.
motions of zooming the camera in, allowing you to focus on whatever it is that you have kind of clicked on, and zooming it back out to take it back into the wider environment and things. It feels like not like it wants you to hyper focus on things, but that it wants you to consider constantly every single thing it is trying to do.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
not everything it is doing is worthy of consideration.
Absolutely. It's like
That's
there's
good
only
point.
so many times that you can tell me there's mold growing on like clothes and mirrors in the house, and it's like until I'm like, okay, I get it. It's
Important for students. Honestly.
like,
It
Yeah.
sounds a bit more like my procrastinating than anything else. So, where I've gone and looked out of the window for the 10th time to see exactly the same thing for no reason. Yep, still dark.
You
You'd love it,
zoom in
Adam.
on the only tree you can see, and just zoom back out again 30 seconds
Yeah.
later.
The
Tree.
moon is out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Odd one, but yeah, it's made by a very, very small team, and it's only about 2 hours long, so I mean, check it out. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
A game that I'm a lot more high on is called OCO. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's OCO, which is a one-button platformer. Yeah, it's sort of like, I guess you could call it like an endless runner almost. It's got this very minimalistic look to it, where you're basically this little square and you're going around these circular like geometric shapes that have like little platforms and stuff, and it continually moves to the right or the left. It just you have perpetual motion basically, and you can only use one button, and that's to jump. I'm playing this on PC, and I was like, this would be the perfect game for mobile. And then I looked it up, and it is on mobile.
Oh.
And then I was like, do I have it on mobile? And it's free, so I recommend everyone go play it on mobile, because it's very good, and I'll get into that later. But I realised that I had downloaded it, because when I looked on my phone, it had like the little cloud thingy where it's like, you've already downloaded this, do you want to download it again? Oh, like, when the hell did I download this? I was like, did I ever play this or what? And I was just like, should I play some more of this? Should I on iPhone, because it seems like the perfect iOS/Android game, and lo and behold, it came out on those platforms like 2 years ago in 2019.
Yep, it's available on Android. I'm downloading it currently.
Yeah, do it. It's one of those where it's like, yeah, I can get a few levels of this in just mindlessly. It's got in-app purchases, but you don't need to use it. I looked at what they are. Don't need them at all. It's basically unlocking
Let's
bits.
find out, shall we?
Yeah, play some of it, Adam. Yeah, play a few levels whilst I'm going through it. But
I
I believe
answer you ever again. Just before me.
I think it launched on PC the 12th of August, so last week or somewhere around then. What's the name of the developer? Spectrum 48. But it's a really unique platformer in the sense that it's so simple, yet it has, a bit of nuance to it. You are having to time your jumps. It isn't just mindless. You start off the game think it's just like, okay, I just tap. But as you get further into the game, unlocking new levels, it's like, okay, I'm having to time these jumps, and then there are different there are different conditions for like completing each level. It's sort of in this like little circular radial thing where it's like three different portions, and it's like, okay, you get one of them for completing the level, you get one of them for completing the level in a certain amount of time, and another for doing it in as little taps as possible. And so like each level, I'm playing at least twice, because some of them it's just like, okay, I did 32 taps on this one, and it's like it tells you can do this in like 4 taps. I'm just like, how? And then it becomes a puzzle game in sensing, how do I just do this in four taps?
Right, we love our puzzle games.
Yeah. So it's sort of got a, you know, slightly twitchy based gameplay to it, but it is also a puzzle game. It's like, okay, how do I do this in the most efficient way as possible? And not only does it have like the main campaign in it, which I think is 8 different worlds. So far they've all had like 15 levels each, and they all introduced a new mechanic in it. I don't want to get too far into spoilers because they are genuinely interesting to find out what they are, but and they are, you know, like portrayed in very easy ways. This is a very colourful game, and the like kind of platforms that are coloured and shaded differently, they represent different mechanics. So sort of is it the blue one? The blue one, which is introduced in the first set of worlds, is basically if your little square goes over them, it does a jump. Green, it means you start going faster, and which brings another mechanic into the world. It's like, okay, I now have momentum, so I can do bigger jumps, longer jumps. And red is like, if I touch the red, I'm dead. I have to restart the level again. And restarting the level is just like, well, on PC, it's just I press R, restarts immediately. So it's very easy just to get into a level and just go, basically.
Yeah.
But it has
like 2 levels there, and it's very much a perfect mobile game in that way.
Yeah.
It's exactly the sort of thing I've been looking for. Is one of those, I need something to do for all of 2 minutes just to occupy myself. You know, play a couple of levels and then put it down again. It's the perfect kind of time fill, which is
nice.
That's what I like from my mobile games, because I don't spend a lot of time playing games on my phone like in that way, but I do find myself sometimes going, well, I've looked at Facebook and Reddit, and I want to look at my phone for 2 minutes, but I need something else to do because there's nothing
instead of
else
doom
happening.
Scrolling,
So
because
I
it's
can refresh this all I want, but the same fucking news stories keep appearing. I need something else.
It's when you put your phone down, you kind of stare at the sky and you think,
still blue.
Fuck, I'll look back at my phone again. Yeah.
This is a much better time sink, trust me. But yeah, it's one of those where it does get a bit taxing later, but it not to the point where it's like, okay, I have to be so involved in this. You can just be like tap tap tap, but maybe pay a bit more attention to it. But it's got, you can make your own levels, and it's got, you can look at community levels as well. This launched on PC like way after mobile, so I think they might have brought all those community created levels into the PC game.
Okay.
So there are a lot that you can try, and there's a daily challenge as well. So you're getting a lot of bang for your buck, to be honest.
Yeah, my $0.
Yeah, with nothing. Yeah, and the in-app purchasing on iOS and Android are buying bits, and those little yellow tokens that you collect. So to finish a level, you have to. There's a certain amount of yellow little tokens on each like circular geometric shape that you have to collect in order to finish the level, and each of those represent like 1 bits or something like that. And if you want to see the optimal way of completing the level, like how do I do it in the shortest amount of time, or with the least amount of taps, you can unlock a video which shows you that, which is great, because it's just like, you know, some of the levels, if you're stuck on, like so many puzzle games do not have like enough people playing them where they have walkthroughs, or it's like I just want the developers to be like, here, this is, even if it's like, you know, a game that's like, here's a step-by-step version, especially pre-release games as well. Like if you're playing like, you know, something that seems like it may have obtuse puzzles, like, I don't know, 12 minutes maybe, you may want to have like a walkthrough pre-release. Games should just offer that, and this just offers you an easy way to see the solutions, which is nice. But you collect so many bits where it's like you don't even need to pay for them. Obviously on PC there's no way to pay for them. It's just like you unlock them. Like you get like 1,000, like when you complete one world or whatever. So you can unlock more like community levels that have been curated, or you can unlock new worlds in the campaign, and yeah, it's a really striking looking puzzle game, and like the path of your like little square, it it leaves like a trail of like its trajectory, and it looks like a spirograph. Like if you just get one of those stencils and start drawing those, it's a really striking game, and the like soundtrack it's dynamic. So every like bounce that you do, it sort of melds into the soundtrack. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this.
Nice.
Yeah.
I haven't experienced that yet because of, you know, podcasting. I shouldn't be playing mobile games while I'm doing it.
Yeah. I like playing it on PC because so I can just slouch and use the space bar to jump, but
what is work?
Might start on, yeah. I might pick it up on mobile as well.
Oh damn.
I will say, I was given a little email address to email if I got stuck in 12 minutes whilst I was reviewing it.
You feel so bad, dude.
I didn't use it. I persevered. I got to a point where I was like, fuck, I think I've done everything I should do. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And then suddenly like, oh, that's what I haven't done yet. Cool. Brilliant.
You didn't put the chicken on the pulley, Ben. You didn't use the monkey on the fire hydrant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking of 12 minutes, I'm not going to talk about it tonight. Lucy, I know you want to play it, so I'm not going to discuss it or spoil anything. If you are on the fence about 12 minutes, it will be out on Game Pass by the time this comes out on podcast services. It is on Game Pass, so it is, you know, if you've got Game Pass, it's free to try. It's also on Steam. All I will say is I fucking loved it. Like,
oh really?
Yeah. Yep.
Even after you got stuck?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Even then.
Getting stuck is a surefire way of testing whether you like a game or not.
Yes, very much.
So if it didn't break you doing that when you're screaming down your, I don't know, your keyboard at it, going, I've been stuck here for days, you know, then
you know when I said that the game would be excellent, as in it's either going to be meh or excellent and nothing in between. I did just look at I was looking through like the articles that I subscribed to, or whatever, and I was just looking through, and it was like all of them. Obviously, the embargo is at a certain time, so all of them came through, and it's sort of like people either hated it or loved it. It seems like a point-and-click adventure game, so with obtuse puzzles. So welcome to the club, Ben. Your brain's now broken, like mine.
No, if
I know what happened. Ben hit off the 8-pack.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I was supposed to do in 12 minutes.
Exactly. So yes, my review of that is now up on outoflives.net.
I look forward to reading that.
Whilst you're at outoflives.net, Lucy also has her Axiom Verge 2 review, which will be up. If you're currently live with us on Twitch, it's not up yet. It will be up tomorrow, but it will be up by the time that most people are listening to this in their podcast service of choice. So I know it's a game we didn't talk about last week, and I probably won't talk about much this week because you can go and read Lucy's
just
thoughts
go read it.
about it over on the site as well.
Elevator pitch, great for exploration, not great for combat. So, yeah, but go read the review.
Nice, good.
But the last game that I'll briefly touch on, because I've not played too much of it. I've probably played like the first 2 worlds of levels in. It's a game called Tetragon, game that you sent over then. It's a... If anyone's ever played like The Bridge, which was the kind of black and white MC Escher kind of puzzle game where you like rotate the world. I think that was like moving boulders to these targets or something like that. But it's sort of in the vein of that, where it's like this rotating puzzle game where it starts off with this cutscene and you're like this lumberjack or something like that.
Oh yeah, back to the lumberjack.
Yeah. I wonder if he likes that beer you're having.
How does he smell?
Tiny. But his son goes missing, and it's like, okay, I don't know what this story is. And for some reason, he's in these like these kind of square frames, and you're like rotating the world. And something that I would have thought how it controls might have been on mobile is this game, because it's very strange in the movement where you're playing as this little guy and he's in these, as I said, like square framed like rotating puzzles, and moving him, it's like I'm playing on Nintendo Switch, and you'd think that movement would be like free, you could just move him left and right liberally, but every time you press like left or right, it has this kind of like delay where it's like, okay, now he's running to the next, because it's sort of in this like grid-like thingy, and every time you move him left or right, it's very laboured, and it feels like I wanted like more freedom of movement, and it feels a bit slow and in that sense, but and unfortunately it doesn't have like touchscreen controls either, because you basically have these pillars that you can move up and down. So if he's on like this one plane and you tilt him, and then he basically falls to the bottom of the other plane, he'll die. It's like he has fall damage. So it's like I need to drag this pillar across, so when I rotate the world 90 degrees, he can fall on this pillar, which is not all the way down there, and he won't fall to his death. And you have to like scroll through and select with the what do they call it, L1 and
the
R1,
shoulder buttons.
They are on Switch. Yeah, the shoulder buttons. Ooh. And it's like it like cycles through each one. It's like I wish I could just select with my finger with touchscreen controls. It's like I want to move this one, I want to drag this one. So that it doesn't feel great to play, unfortunately. But the look of it, it's got this really nice, like, I think it might be hand drawn art, very colourful. Like the square frame that you're in, it's got like this. It's kind of like depth to the art, and it's like, oh, this is very colourful and nice looking, and music's okay. And the puzzles so far are just. I think the gameplay hinders it a bit. I think the puzzles would be more enjoyable if I had that kind of freedom of movement, that ease of control. But the puzzles are okay. So, they're okay so far. I haven't been stuck. I haven't had to think too hard. It seems like there might be multiple solutions to each puzzle, which is actually quite interesting. Yeah. It doesn't seem like there's just one way to beat the game in some of these puzzles, which seems okay. I did look. I think there's maybe about 4 worlds, so I don't know how long that run time is going to be, because I've pretty much done the first 2, and it didn't take me that long. So
okay,
it's one I'm going to keep with it. I'm going to keep with it, and hopefully speak about it in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
next
maybe
week.
we'll get an update in in next week or in a couple of weeks when you've run through the full game. So
Cool.
Yeah,
The other thing I was
just
gonna
right now
ask
the
was-
the controls are a bit of a hindrance, but
Is it only on Switch or is it on other
I
stuff?
think it might be on. It's on PC.
I think it's on everything.
Yeah.
It sounds like it would probably be better to play on PC if you don't have
Yeah.
touch controls, because at least then you'd have the mouse to click
Absolutely,
on things.
that'd-
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Unless it makes you use the arrow keys or something, which would be terrible.
But it feels like the guy should just be able to just run. I think maybe I understand why they do it, because if you like accidentally say just run off a tall precipice and fall to your death, it doesn't seem like there's a rewind mechanic. So I guess that could be very frustrating if it's like I have to do this whole level again. But yeah, it's
That would depend
The
on the
controls are a bit weird.
checkpointing, wouldn't it? If it has any in the levels.
yeah. But yeah, it looks beautiful. Like as I
Yeah.
said, there's like some depth to the art there, and it's like set in this very like overgrown forestry kind of world. But yeah, it's I don't know where the story's gonna go. I guess you'll find your son eventually, but yeah.
He's hanging out with Kratos, mate, walking up mountains, just fucking shooting people, isn't he? Like,
Oh, just be sitting there chewing on some granite.
yeah. Good. That seems like a perfect place for us to finish this week. We will jump back into our beers before we sign out for the episode. Lucy, you had 2 beers. Did you enjoy them both?
Yeah, I did. And I mean, Moonwake. I'll be looking at their beers in the future, see what they come out with. It was a quintessential IPA in the fact that it was bitter. It was old school bitterness, which I miss. But yeah, I grew accustomed to that bitterness, and I guess getting used to it, I felt a bit more of that fruity citrus kind of taste at the start, and it wasn't as dry as I first suspected. As I say, maybe that was just my palate getting used to it. But despite the weird flavor text on this Beak Brewery beer, I'd be interested to see if all of their cans have that kind of flowery nonsense language.
Yes.
But yeah, that's the winner. This is just a very good tasting beer. Had a bit of water just to see if some of the previous beer was like clouding my judgment a bit on like if it was bitter at all, and I can definitely confirm that it's not bitter. It's more piney, and I think maybe you could conflate that with bitterness, because yes, it is really piney. Of all the things that are said on the back of the can, they got that one right. So
They got one thing right.
yeah. And I love that like really piney resinous kind of taste as well. But yeah, tropical fruit flavors at the start, and it's not quite a juice bomb, but it is very fruit forward. Probably just a little bit of bitterness at the end. Not what I associate with a West Coast IPA, but when it tastes this good, it truly doesn't matter. That's just trivial. It doesn't matter. So
okay, nice.
yeah, the Gurr from Beak Brewery wins it this week.
Brilliant.
But definitely going to look out for more Moonwake, because that was enjoyable.
Good. For me, I think it's probably self-explanatory from my discussion of the 2 beers that I'm going to pick the Pomona Island this week. The Left-Handed Giant, kind of as I drank it more and became a little bit more accustomed to it, that kind of like mash of flavors did gel a little bit more as I drank it, but only in so much that the flavors that were butting up against each other kind of just hit this awkward middle ground and didn't kind of give one way or the other, really. The Pomona Island was lovely. The man with the 4-way hips, very refreshing, very easy, full of fruit. Just a lovely light beer to start an evening off with, and not just that, but to drink kind of all night. It's definitely a beer that I would have returned to again and again and again through an evening if I'd have had more of them. The Left-Handed Giant is a bit more of an acquired kind of taste. With that aniseed, it's looking for people who want that, maybe not even 8.5%, but people who are looking for like triple IPAs.
Yeah.
Or quadruples rather than doubles. It feels bigger than it is, which is good in some ways. Great when it's a 4.5% beer, feeling a little bit bigger. Not so much when it's an 8.5% beer, feeling a little bit bigger. But there will be obviously people who will very much enjoy the Left-Handed Giant. From what I recall of Dream House, it does feel like a souped up version of that, but in almost this kind of like skewed kind of way, taking that kind of maybe more earthy sort of tone and trying to find that middle ground, but creating this kind of aniseedy sort of flavour to it, which persisted, even when those two flavours kind of muddled and weren't bashing up against each other. When my palate had got them both and was like, yeah, this is the flavour I'm getting now. Aniseed was definitely what I was getting from that, even then. So it's the Pomona Island for me this week.
Nice.
There are beers. Adam, have you got anything you would like to finish out as you've got no beer to talk about? Is there any lasting words you'd like to leave us with this week, or anything you'd like to share?
Check out on site on the 20th for a wee post I did about what Sucker Punch could do next after Iki Island for Ghost of Tsushima.
Okay.
I put together a few potential ideas for options for sequels, whether they continue with Jin's story, because obviously we don't know how that ends yet because we haven't played Iki Island, or if they just want to take the ghost of something and take it elsewhere in a kind of more maybe Assassin's Creed-esque kind of setting hopping kind of adventure, then I put together a couple of options there, so please give that a read, because I spent a lot of time on Wikipedia double checking my facts. No doubt some of them are still wrong because it was Wikipedia I was using, but it was good fun, and there's some good options in there, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna read that as someone who's not a massive fan of Sucker Punch. I would like to see what fans of their games would do.
Yeah.
And as the person who's wearing the beanie, more protagonists with beanies. Like Delsin in the fantastic, infamous Second
Son. Yeah, Second Son.
I don't want to get your hopes up, but I don't think beanies will feature much in the settings I've suggested.
It's not burgundy either, Lucy. It needs to be burgundy.
I mean, they could. It's a video game after all. They can do anything they want.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly that. As we've discussed,
I think make was it Last Light, First Light? Just make
Second
Light.
First
Light.
I don't fucking remember.
I'm pretty sure it was.
That was better than the
That
game.
was the power I liked the best out of Infamous.
Yes,
It was
absolutely.
It was brilliant.
Whatever that television broadcast one was, I was just like, you really ran out of ideas, didn't you?
And then they gave you the last
Really?
power after you finished the game. It's kind of stupid. You can play it almost if you want. I'm like, no. Don't think I will.
It almost felt like the Captain Planet of video games, wasn't it? It was like Earth, Fire, Water, Air, Heart. You're like, oh, brilliant. Good. I've got the heart skill. Thanks very much for that one.
Yeah.
That's the one that everyone obviously can use to destroy everything with. Perfect.
You can destroy everything with love.
I mean, it's true. We talked about Boyfriend Dungeon. Of course you can.
Yeah.
I mean, if you start with smoke and neon, going back to concrete is a bit underwhelming for the final one. It's enough ragging on that. Ghost
Yeah,
of
it was
Tsushima
a
is much
launch
better.
game.
I mean,
Launch
it is.
window game. So
But the first
Enjoyed Second
infamous
Son,
game.
to be fair. But
The
it was
first
neon
infamous
I
game was
enjoyed.
the first infamous game was fantastic.
Yeah.
You see, I always thought those games were 5 hours of good ideas stretched over like 20 hours.
Oh, absolutely.
I
Yes.
just didn't gel with them, any of them.
Yeah.
So
Which is probably why First Light sat quite well with you, because it was the best
Yeah.
power from Second Son, but also it was like 6 hours long, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. And it had the more interesting characters in it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They did a great job of pairing the best power with the best character.
They were like, we got something
very
here,
easy.
lads.
Yeah.
Scrap the rest.
Yeah. More of that, please, Sucker Punch. Thank you very much. You've got tons of time after you release the director's cut and whatever the upgrade paths are through the PlayStation Store to get whatever it is you can get.
I'm
through
really
all that.
glad I'm not trying to upgrade across the consoles, and I'm only trying to upgrade the PS4 version I have.
Seems like
Because-
a mess, man.
That's going to be difficult enough, I think. And adding a second console into the mix would have made it so much worse.
You
Yeah.
just think, what's going on, man? That should. It's more stark and noticeable when your competitor is doing it so seamlessly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they don't have the positive personalities like Andrew House and stuff to hide behind the way they had before. Andrew House would at least have came out and had a very positive spin to put on all this shit. That would help obfuscate some of the kind of bollocks that.
Agreed.
Whereas Jim Ryan and stuff he doesn't have the same popular presence, as it were.
Completely.
I'm sure he's a very good executive for the day-to-day stuff or whatever, because I mean he got to where he is somehow.
Well,
I'm gonna-
I mean, you can
I'm
see
going
it.
to err on
though.
the side of caution here with the video game industry and say that it's for positive reasons this time.
But you can see it. You can see that Andrew House would have come out and he'd have given a 5-minute chat about it, and everyone would have gone, "Yeah, cool, all right." Sean Layden would have come out and given you like 2 sentences, and everyone would have been like, "Yeah, brilliant." No, I get that. Sean Layden, we understand.
Trenton,
Jack
man.
Trenton would have
Jack
walked out.
Trenton, yeah.
He'd have just walked out and
He would have gone.
"Hey," and everyone would have gone, "Fine,
And
we'll do
left.
whatever you want, Jack. Don't worry about it. It's okay." Gone from Sony of those days. But
that's quite small.
you know, it is what it is now. Anyway, there are the beers. They are the games that we have been playing over the last week, and with Ghost of Tsushima upgrade probably over the next week. If you would like to come and see the reviews that we talk about for 12 minutes and Lucy's Axiom Verge 2 review, which is going up soon, go to outoflives.net. You can get us Out of Lives Net on Twitter to talk to us about whatever you like. We have a Discord as well. Come and chat to us and we will give you a link to come and discuss games, beer, whatever you want, movies, all these sorts of things that we talk about on a daily basis.
Words. I'm talking about the new.
Occasionally, bit of football, bit of rugby. You know, there's loads of stuff that we chat about in the
Canada.
in the Discord.
Anti-capitalism.
Yes, well, there's a lot of anti-capitalism. Be prepared for that if you do join us in the Discord, which you should do. I am at Nova_47 if you want to talk to me individually about stuff. Lucy is,
Juicy Loose 9, literally everywhere.
and Adam is.
At Snack. APT Snack.
Perfect. That is everywhere that we are. They are the spaces we inhabit. They're the games that we played. They're the beers that we have drank. For another week, we've been tanked up. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
www.outoflives.net